Welcome, folks. Well, the full moon falls early morning Halloween this year, so happy Halloween to everybody. I'm not doing great. I'm brutally depressed, but that's not any of your fault, so let's try to get through this without me bringing anyone down. Hello, Rex, Grizz, two more V's. Good to see you there. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to start by saying Grizz had an awesome conversation with Job from the Bridges of Meaning Discord, our good friend Paul Vanderclay's Discord. Um, they did a live conversation earlier today that I thought was excellent. So if anyone missed that, you can check that out. And tomorrow, Two More V's is going to be treating everyone with some songs off his upcoming album. Pentecost for the Zombie Apocalypse, the musical. I'm not sure I got the title right. You can correct that for me if you're still there. Two more V's. But anyway, tomorrow night, 10 p.m., we'll be premiering some songs off of that. And I believe Jonathan Pajot will be there to discuss it with us. Since it's Halloween and my depressed brain really has nothing to say at the moment, I'm going to start by reading a couple short things by Lovecraft. So this is called Memory. In the valley of Nis, the accursed waning moon shines thinly, tearing a path for its light with feeble horns through the lethal foliage of a great upas tree. And within the depths of the valley, where the light reaches not, move forms not meant to be beheld. Rank is the herbage on each slope, where evil vines and creeping plants crawl amidst the stone of ruined palaces, twining tightly about broken columns and strange monoliths, and heaving up marble pavements laid by forgotten hands. And in trees that grow gigantic in crumbling courtyards leap little apes, while in and out of deep treasure vaults writhe poison serpents and scaly things without a name. Vast are the stones which sleep beneath coverlets of dank moss, and mighty were the walls from which they fell. For all time did their builders erect them, and in sooth they yet serve nobly. For beneath them the gray toad makes his habitation. At the very bottom of the valley lies the river Than, whose waters are slimy and filled with weeds. From hidden springs it rises, and to subterranean grottos it flows, so that the daemon of the valley knows not why its waters are red, nor whither they are bound. The genie that haunts the moonbeams spake to the daemon of the valley, saying, I am old and forget much. Tell me the deeds and aspect and name of them who built these things of stone. And the daemon replied, I am memory, and am wise in lore of the past, but I too am old. These beings were like the waters of the river Than, not meant to be understood. Their deeds I recall not, for they were but of the moment. Their aspect I recall dimly, for it was like to that of the little apes in the trees. Their name I recall clearly, for it rhymed with that of the river. These beings of yesterday were called man. So the genie flew back to the thin-horned moon, and the daemon looked intently at a little ape in a tree that grew in a crumbling courtyard. Greetings, Nolan, Daniel, Nerdy Bird, Gregory Witcher. Hope everyone's doing better than I am. I'm depressed. If anyone's doing as bad or worse than me, God help you. Yeah, good night, two more V's. Get some sleep, and yeah, I'll see you all tomorrow. I love you, brother. God bless. So how's everyone else doing tonight? I'm going to read another story and then I'll respond to whatever's in the chat. I'm going to read another short one. You're depressed as well, Nerdy Bird? All right, well, we'll be depressed together for a little while, and hopefully that eases it for you in some way. At least you're not alone in the darkness. I'm there too. Grizz says, I'm excited about a pillow video coming out after this. There, now is everyone having a much better Halloween that you're excited to find out what pillow video Grizz could be talking about? And Nerdy Bird says, have been depressed for weeks on end. Yeah, me too. I've had a rough October. That's why I'm here, brother. All right, good. So there's some fucking purpose for me being here. Yeah, so to anyone who's depressed at the moment, you're not alone. All right, Dagon. I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless and at the end of my supply of the drug, which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation, so that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, while we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners. So liberal indeed was the discipline of our captors that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight. The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream infested, was continuous. When last I awaked, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish and other less desirable things, which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and of the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet. As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions which for innumerable millions of years had laid hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, strain my ears as I might, nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert. That night I encamped, and on the following day still traveled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it. By the fourth evening, I had attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance, an intervening valley, setting it out in deeper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again, and in the glow of the moon, I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me, but I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illuminate. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on a gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian depths where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me, an object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon. That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself, but I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express, for despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or the archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely. The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly about the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me, and unlike anything I had ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did the most to hold me spellbound. Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas reliefs, whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Dore. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bueller, they were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background, for one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented but a little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe, some tribe whose last descendants had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing while the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters, vast, Polyphemus-like and loathsome. It darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, and while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard the peals of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moments. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing, nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe. Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god. But soon, perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries. It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug is given only transient surcease and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men. Often I ask myself if it could not have all been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man of war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols, and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down in their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind, of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean floor shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me. God, that hand. The window. The window. There's one more short one in this that I really like, that I'll read at the end or in a few minutes. Doesn't end on quite as the same downer as jumping out a window. So Daniel says, I hope so far you were able to recharge your batteries mentally and physically. I haven't really yet. I've had a really rough month. It's been a combination of with bipolar depression and time of year. There's the internal forces there, but also, I don't want to talk about the details of difficulties in my daily life, but there have been outside circumstances that have been difficult to deal with, and that summer idiot version of me pushed himself way the fuck too hard this year and left me extremely burned out. So I haven't really recovered any energy. I've been trying to deal with things. That's enough about that bullshit. It's good to see you too. Nerdy Bird wrote, pesky undulations indeed. As I say, it's not unduly for me to undulate. I like that. And after commenting that soon I'm going to have a pioneer beard, Daniel writes, pioneers were interesting people. I remember a museum about the pioneers that they have in Nebraska, a real one. You can even see it in the movie About Schmidt. Never seen About Schmidt. Elder, good to see you here. I love you too, brother. Yeah, I'll message you sometime when I'm answering messages. I've taken the whole month of October off from checking messages and all. And I'm not really sure if I'm going to catch up on all the messages that I've gotten over October immediately in November or not. I may stay fairly shut down for a while, or I may start getting back to people. I just can't fucking predict it. But I will reach out to you at some point, Elder. Good to see you here tonight. I hope you're doing well. How's shit going for you? Daniel asks, do I like to read Jack London? Did he write White Fang or some book like that? I read White Fang when I was a kid. But maybe, I'm not sure what Jack London wrote. So I'm not sure if I've read any. Yeah, Grizz, that is a good line. Dreadfully distinct against the dark. And yeah, perceiving he was hopelessly conventional was a good line in that story. Hi, Emmy. Hope you're having a good night. I read a bit of Lovecraft is what was going on here, and now I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't really have much kind to say. Okay, well, I'll just read what Patty wrote. This is a quote from Modest Mouse, apparently. Mankind's behaving like some serial killer, giant old monsters afraid of the sharks. And Daniel says, what kind of animals have I seen lately? None recently. I haven't spent much time outside once it's gotten colder. And yeah, the chipmunks and groundhog haven't been around much towards the end of last month anyway. I haven't really been spent much time outside this month. And there's not much around now anyway. Although not this month. At the end of last month, I saw 2 wild weasels, which is very rare, and a rabbit. But I think maybe that was the beginning of this month. Yeah, the beginning of this month, I was outside a bit. Just Nebula was the only chipmunk around, but I haven't seen her in weeks. Nerdy Bird said, if I may, nice job. Most folks find Lovecraft laborious to read, especially aloud. I love Lovecraft. But thanks, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, and Daniel says yes. I already forget the name of the author, but yes, he wrote White Fang. I remember loving that book as a kid. Hey, Pat, it's good to see you here. Yeah, I just pretty much went dark for the month. And if you messaged me anywhere, I haven't checked messages all month. I assume you heard me say just a few minutes ago that I'm not sure exactly when I will again. Two wild weasels and a sheep's skin shimmering softly under a blue gibbous baboon. All right, Grizz, I read that. I don't know what it meant, but I read it for you. Yes, I will read anything. Actually, I kind of like that nonsense. Two wild weasels and a sheepskin shimmering softly under a blue gibbous baboon. Nolan is still here. How you doing? We haven't talked in a fuck of a long while either. How you holding up lately? Anyway, have I watched any of Rogan's recent podcasts? Seems like he's trying to break the internet. Yes, what did I watch of Rogan? I saw the whole Kanye one, and I watched half of the one with Alex Jones, and especially with my depression, yeah, I couldn't handle the whole one with Alex Jones. But I watched the one with Kanye the whole way through, and was surprised at the end how many things he said I liked. I don't really know fuck all about Kanye. And I wasn't as interested in the beginning because he and I seem to have very few overlapping interests. I'm not at all interested in hip hop. I don't care about sports or sneakers. The famous people he discussed, like that he hangs out with, are not people that I know anything about either. So I know fuck all about Kanye. And early on, yeah, because I'm not interested in the things that he's apparently excellent at. I didn't get a lot out of the early part. But then later on, I don't know. I was impressed by the guy after listening to the whole thing. And while on the one hand, it's like terrifying that some bipolar person like me that thinks they talk directly to God could be president, compared to the types of politicians we have now. If I was the kind of person who voted and lived in America, I probably would roll the dice with Kanye. I was impressed. Oh, I'm glad to hear you're doing well, Nolan. Yeah, have a good night, and maybe we'll see you when we're live tomorrow. Apparently, Pajot's going to be here. Yeah, good night, and I love you, brother. Daniel says you are our pioneer philosopher. You'll be okay. Well, we'll see. I'll be okay at some point, I assume, if I live long enough. For now, I'm just working on being okay with not being okay. Now, Grizz wants me to say Kanye redid his set like the bowls of heck. Pat says, I think the depression has been a wave that many of us have needed to ride for a little bit. No, I'm sorry to hear that a lot of people have been dealing with depression lately, but I guess, yeah, a lot of people have seasonal depression. It can start, you know, and with the difficulties of pandemics and such, it could be a difficult holiday for a lot of people. So, anyone who is struggling with depression, fuck, you have my sympathy and prayers. Nerdy Bird says, regarding checking messages, I too am constantly working backwards myself and usually have to simply move on. And Daniel says, do you do a lot of mindfulness? I'm guessing yes. Yeah, being as crazy as I am, I have to be mindful as much as I can be. Because when extreme states kick in, they're fucking overpowering. It's difficult not to get swept up in it and to lose that distance between I am not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, and that shit, and to hold some control. And so to deal with myself, I have to be almost constantly mindful to know which way to steer against. I try, yeah, I've spent enough time alone focused on mindfulness that I'm always aware, almost always aware of what I'm feeling and not getting caught up in something. Like being present with thoughts without identifying with them and without necessarily believing them. And I've had this month I've had some extreme states where some inner shit, the suicidal shit, or the part that just wants to let go into a form of psychosis and run off into the woods and go and just run away from myself, go wild. Some really fucked up shit got flared up badly this month. But I managed to keep myself under control and be present with it and let it pass. What are some of the things I've noticed while mindfully observing depression this time around? All right, one thing I noticed, which I've noticed before, but I really saw it more sharply at the moment, is my depression will take anything that I can't do and tried to do during the year. When I get to this time of year, look back over the summer or something, anything I tried to do and failed at, my depression will hammer at me fucking hard over. Like it was about this time of year last year that the only time I missed a full moon, that I had a really, really bad night one of the full moons. I've only missed one of these so far. It was like some shit happened just a couple hours before midnight, and I could not process it in time to go live. The month after that, my depression beat me up really fucking badly over that. It mattered a lot that I missed that fucking full moon. But since then, I haven't missed a full moon. And I put a lot of time into the channel this summer. Because I achieved it, that means absolutely nothing to my depression. So that part of me that beat up on me last year for missing one full moon, like last year, that part of me would make a big fucking deal about it, like what a big deal it is that I didn't do the full moon. And like that it would be so great if I had done it. I should feel like such shit for not managing it. Having managed to do, like, to not miss one this year, like, if there's a certain part of my depression that, yeah, picked on me badly for that last year. And this year, when I take to it, hey, I got through every moon this year, it's just like, so fucking what? That's stupid that you do those at all. So I can see really clearly how there's a part of me that, and it's for different things. Like when I was working on being more honest and whatnot, anything. If you're working on something and you fail at it, your depression will say that is such an important thing. It would have mattered so much if you'd done it right, you fucking loser. But if you get something right, it just goes, so what? That's fucking easy to do, or that's stupid. You shouldn't have done it in the first place. Or why the fuck would you be proud of yourself for that? That's pathetic. But rather than getting caught up in those things and deciding then that it doesn't, like, yeah, the me that I'm experiencing right now is not in any way put any value to the fact that I do anything here in the channel. The depressed part of me is just embarrassed that I'm doing it. And it'll sort of go, yeah, if it helps anyone, that's great. But it's like that's just a sign of how pathetic the world is if I'm capable of being helpful to anyone. And that the help is fuck all anyway, and that it's everything I do on here is just embarrassing. So I observe all that shit. And I know that's coming from depression, so I steer against it. I'm allowing myself to step back from the channel to a certain degree, but I'm making myself stick to the full moon so I don't drift too far away. And I'm not letting myself quit the channel because the suicidal part of me that, some days is hammered pretty hard at me that I should kill myself. The next, when it backs off on that, it tries to convince me to quit the channel. So because I'm mindful of the fact that I'm suicidally depressed, I don't act on it. And in my mindfulness, I've observed, especially because this year I burned up my mental, like for me, the year is kind of like a day. Um, this year I really fucking noticed in my mindfulness that it was before I went dark. I reached like there's this thing, decision fatigue, that we all have. That at a certain point during the day, your brain will get tired of making decisions. That's why some people in powerful positions or scientists or shit will have certain things on a schedule that they just wear the same clothes every day. But some, like people in positions of power that have to make a lot of decisions, or some scientists try to eliminate unnecessary decisions, what to wear in the morning, what to eat, because there's this phenomenon of decision fatigue, where at a certain point during the day, your brain just gets tired of making decisions. I've observed that that's part of how my brain doesn't work well when I'm depressed. And when I was still busy trying with the channel, and when I was still trying to keep up on messages and shit, and just slowing down a bit more before going dark, I hadn't really looked closely enough at how my brain was freezing up in conversations. After taking some time, like more fucking time alone and examining it more closer, I realized, like, oh shit, I've got this yearly decision fatigue as well as a daily one, sort of. But for me, that's burned the fuck out. It's really hard for me to make any decisions tiring to me. It's as if you've ever had like a long day where you've had to make a lot of decisions, and if you get what I mean by decision fatigue, where just the simplest thing, what to eat, whether to put wood in the fire yet, whether to this or that, should, like, just the smallest decision is so difficult for me now. I've got this yearly that's burned out. Pat says, I don't think depression is necessarily a bad thing, just feels that way, but gets us to our next highs. Yeah, I still try to. It's what the depression feels like and what I stick to. I still stick to the fucking axioms that I always do, that everything happens for a reason and all of that shit. But that feels hollow. I stick to it. But it's like all the hope and optimism. I've burned out my yearly fucking supply of either of those. I don't feel any hope or optimism towards anything. I work on like gratitude and whatnot, and that does help, but it just improves the depression. Like makes that not quite as bad. And I hold on to my faith that this is for a purpose. And I hold on to loving, not cursing God. And it's not even like the light is out, that I can't sense God, but it's like the light is cold. My inner atheist or agnostic, whatever the fuck it is very active when I'm this depressed. And so I stick to my faith in God, but it often feels stupid and embarrassing. But if it's not for a purpose, I'm fucked. And even the depressed part of me will not let me invest. The nihilism will just make it worse. So even when it feels hollow and cold, I'm sticking to walking the path the best that I can. And so it's trying to practice what Job did, to experience difficulty and still love God throughout it. Is one thing that I think is possibly useful out of this. Or practicing the fucking whatever the meditation's called, where you work on agapic love. Doing that in this state is brutally painful. You can love the world, but it's heartbreaking. But it feels like an opportunity to practice that kind of love. It's like putting heavy weight on it. Can you hold on to it when it hurts? And the really dark shit's risen up this month, which that's the kind of shit that I have to maintain an overall mindfulness so that that never slips in and I don't walk around letting its thoughts run through my head, like, and getting caught up in them. That inner fucking adversary that's like, you know what, this is fucking horrible. Let's turn against everything. And all the hell that that thing wants to unleash. I've kept it in check. I've been mindful from the moment it's risen up, and I've stood against that. Della says the Coyotes are loud tonight. It sounds like the pack is huge. Cool. That's what the head on the wall behind me is, by the way. It's Coyote. I think you know that. Just in case someone thought it was a wolf, that's a coyote head. I do not know the song. I've got friends in low places, Grizz. Sorry. And Patty's pointing out a synchronicity. The song he was referring to is called Coyotes. And Nerdy Bird's agreeing, saying, I find mindfulness most ameliorating. And Daniel says, I need to do more mindfulness. Yeah, I find mindfulness an unending activity. It's endlessly, you can always pay more attention, be more aware. Before I went mad, I didn't understand. I don't know if I'd even heard of mindfulness. But before I went mad, I wouldn't have understood this at all. I thought I was my thoughts and emotions. It's amazing how much there is inside of us. But before I went mad, I wasn't even willing to look at. There was so much in myself. Yeah, I've done so much shadow work and found so much in myself. And there's plenty of it that I should have been aware of before. Those things you realize you're denying about yourself and that you're actually pushing into the shadows. I can look back now at myself doing that, and I'm just shocked that I could operate that way, completely caught up, thinking I am every thought, but then wanting to push away embarrassing or negative parts of the self where you just deny it's not there and pretend it's not there until you don't notice it anymore and lie to yourself about it. Chris says, so what? I got a monkey on my neck saying, so what, all the time. Hi, Taylor. Thanks for joining us. It's good to have you here tonight. By great, I mean good. Nothing can really be great when I'm depressed. Well, welcome. Good to share the Halloween night with you. Not thrilled to hear that you're depressed as well, but if it helps to be with a couple other depressed people and to know you're not alone, I hope that helps somehow. Much love to you and everybody struggling. And Patty's pointing out the quote, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Yeah. And you can get that more under control with mindfulness. Nerdy Bird says, this is why I like listening to you. I relate so very well. Some of the thoughts I've been subjected to would be irresponsible of me to share. Yeah, same here. There's plenty of shit that I have to listen to that I'm not going to put on anyone else. But fuck, I'm glad it helps you to know that other people go through similar shit and that this embarrassing bullshit of me coming on here and talking about this helps some people in some way. Pat says improve the necessary depression. Might as well. Yeah, I'm working on it. Or the depression that is actually happening, if not necessary. And Nerdy Bird says regarding decisions, yep, one's will is proven to be a finite resource. It certainly is. Oh, good night, programs. Good to have seen you here. Yeah, I'm not sure how long until I can be a bit more active, but I'll reach out to you when I am. And Pat points out it's really easy to be in the everything happens as it has to when things are going well. Yes. And Nerdy Bird says it's so fucking hard to be grateful in this wacky world. Yes, it can be. But like Peterson likes to say, you can always make things worse. So just imagine some of the things that could be worse. Like the power being out, not having running water, not having heat, not having cigarettes. You can be grateful. Yeah, there's always worse. So I can always find something to be grateful when I'm looking for that. At least I have food and shelter. I have running water and electricity. Got smokes and medicine. If I have to be suicidally depressed, I'm very grateful I have those things. Love you too, Pat. Chris says gratitude comes easier when it's you I'm grateful for. And ooh, hiding self-worth in the shadow. Nerdy Bird says never be embarrassed of your beliefs. I don't believe like most folks. If you recall, I'm your resident Spinozet Buddhist, but I have enormous respect for another's interpretation of God. Yeah, and my beliefs are all about mysterious shit anyway. I don't believe in any one idea of God. I believe in whatever fucking God is actually there. I believe in something that is mysterious and beyond my comprehension. So I'm aware that I don't know exactly what I believe in, and that many different parts of me interpret the world in different ways. And Nerdy Bird is saying to Taylor, we're here for you. Yes, we are. And Grizz is asking if you're a resident on the Discord, because it would be totally cool if you explain the Spine Buddha words in our new estuary. Yeah, and so anyone who's active in the chat, if you're depressed or if you're happy, but you enjoy interacting with the kind of oddballs that gather around the channel, the link for our Discord is in the description. And even when I'm not active, Grizz and a few other people are keeping it at least somewhat active over on the Discord. Hey, I made it to a fucking hour. That's the minimum I tried to hold myself to. And I didn't say at the beginning that I was going to stick around for at least an hour, because to get myself to go on tonight, I told myself, fuck it. If you can't handle an hour, just show up. So I was going to let myself break doing a full hour if I needed to, but we made it till 1 a.m. I'm going to read one more Lovecraft, a very short one. That even though still being nicely fucked up and Lovecraftian, as a more optimistic end in a weird way to me. So Taylor says a text general chat in the Discord would be very helpful. I'm unable to really decide where to post most of the time. I don't really use the Discord part of Discord. I go to Discord to like direct message people. And so yeah, for anyone who doesn't know that, I haven't been answering over the month of October. Messages. I'm taking a bit of downtime of not messaging people. And I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last. But if anyone does want to talk to me whenever I've got a bit more energy, Discord's the place you can write to me. And feel free to write to me at the moment, even though I'm not going to be answering, because you understand that it may or may not be quite a while until I answer. I can't predict, but I don't mind people writing to me and then getting caught up whenever I'm feeling able to, or trying to get caught up. If there's too much to go through, I might just announce that and ask people to write again. But I think I'll be able to read through everything eventually. And as far as where to post shit on Discord, Grizz or someone else will help you figure that out. And I don't think anyone's going to bite your head off for posting things in the wrong place a couple times until you figure it out. And SMO community chat, I guess that's the general, Taylor says. Yeah, I guess so. And occasionally people point specific things out to me that I do look at on the Discord, but overall, that's really not my doing. I mean, I use the announcements, although tonight Grizz did because I didn't, I think. But I use the announcements there in direct messages and don't often post or read anything else at all. But there are some awesome fucking people there. All right, I'm going to read another Lovecraft and then maybe disappear. Azathoth. When age fell upon the world, and wonder went out of the minds of men, when gray cities reared to smoky skies, tall towers grim and ugly, in whose shadow none might dream of the sun or of spring's flowering meads, when learning stripped earth of her mantle of beauty, and poets sang no more, save of twisted phantoms seen with bleared and inward looking eyes. When these things had come to pass, and childish hopes had gone away forever, there was a man who traveled out of life on a quest into the spaces whither the world's dreams had fled. Of the name and abode of this man, but little is written, for they were of the waking world only. Yet it is said that both were obscure. It is enough to know that he dwelt in a city of high walls where sterile twilight reigned, and that he toiled all day among shadows and turmoil, coming home at evening to a room whose one window opened not on the fields and groves, but on a dim court where other windows stared in dull despair. From that casement, one might see only walls and windows, except sometimes when one leaned far out and peered aloft at the small stars that passed. And because mere walls and windows must soon drive to madness a man who dreams and reads much. The dweller in that room used night after night to lean out and peer aloft, to glimpse some fragment of things beyond the waking world and the grayness of tall cities. After years, he began to call the slow sailing stars by name and to follow them in fancy when they glided regretfully out of sight, till at length his vision opened to many secret vistas whose existence no common eye suspects. And one night a mighty gulf was bridged, and the dream haunted skies swelled down to the lonely watcher's window to merge with the close air of his room and to make him a part of their fabulous wonder. There came to that room wild streams of violet midnight, glittering with dust of gold, vortices of dust and fire, swirling out of the ultimate spaces and heavy with perfumes from beyond the worlds. Opiate oceans poured there, litten by suns that the eye may never behold, and having in their whirlpools strange dolphins and sea nymphs of unrememberable deeps. Noiseless infinity eddied around the dreamer and wafted him away without even touching the body that leaned stiffly from that lonely window. And for days not counted in men's calendars, the tides of far spheres bear him gently to join the dreams for which he longed, the dreams that men have lost. And in the course of many cycles, they tenderly left him sleeping on a green sunrise shore, a green shore fragrant with lotus blossoms and starred by red camelotes. All right, on that note, happy Halloween. Yeah, for anyone who's interested, tomorrow at 10 Eastern, or later today, technically, um, two more V's, and I believe Jonathan Pajot are going to go live with me, and we're going to listen to a bit of his music. Hope everyone who's feeling depressed gets some relief. God bless everyone. Lunatic loved all.